And it's time, once again, for another episode of
The Horror Guys.
Yay!
Yay!
I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
What do we got?
We're going to talk about horror movies. We got 4 movies and a short and a couple bonus films we're going to briefly mention, but you can check out on the website.
All right.
We're back to our regular format after last week's shorts episode.
4 movies and a short this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to start out with the latest adaptation of Dracula.
1 chapter of it.
Just the one chapter of it anyway.
Magnify, yeah.
The Last Voyage of the Demeter from 2023.
The Demeter? 3 feet of... No.
Demeter?
Demeter?
Yeah.
No.
Uh-huh.
Demeter.
You were 2 Demeters tall?
Yeah.
Demeter. We'll then take a trip to a different kind of cabin in the woods with The Latent Image, a new film from 2023, just came out this week.
Brand spanking new.
After we watch a silly short film, and it is a very silly short film.
Oh, is it ever? But it's a good one.
We'll wind back the clock with Amityville 1992. It's About Time. And then we'll watch the action-packed, but still often terrifying, Aliens from 1986. And then over on the newsletter, we're not going to talk about it here, but if you want to go to horrorbulletin.com, check out our newsletter. We've also got 2 Academy Award-winning films. Misery from 1990.
Mm-hmm.
I'm your number 1 fan.
Yes, you are.
And The Picture of Dorian Gray from 1945.
They had Oscars back then?
They did.
Yeah, they did. That one for Best Cinematography. That was a thing back then. And it's got some interesting effect where it, besides the superb cinematography, you can see how good it is. So it used the shadows and all kinds of stuff. Flashes of color. It's black and white, but, some
it's
shocking.
Color in all the right places.
Shocking flashes of color, yeah.
All right. And the Horror Bulletin Monthly, our print magazine, just came out this past week. We're up to issue number 24.
Hot diggity.
Includes all the reviews from last month. It's got it's got all the shorts in it. So if you want to do your own little film festival, the book will help you do that.
You betcha.
We got a couple of new books coming up in the next few months, which we'll be talking about as the time comes.
Mm-hmm.
The Horror Guy's Guide to Amicus. All those Amicus films. Everybody knows about Hammer from the 60s and 70s. Their big competitor was Amicus Films, and they did a whole bunch of those anthology films is what they're probably best known for.
Interesting.
And that'll be out in the next couple of weeks. Also, it's not horror exactly, it's science fiction. But I don't know if we've even mentioned it here before, but besides the Horror Guys, I've also put out some old-time radio books. You remember old-time radio? When they had before there's TV?
Radio shows.
Yeah. Well, I've done a couple of these books. One of them is called The Old-Time Radio Listener's Guide to Dark Fantasy. And it was 29 episodes of like a horror, I don't want to say horror podcast, it was a horror radio show.
Yeah, if you've ever been a fan of the TV shows like Twilight Zone and the Night Gallery and so forth, they used to do those on radio.
They
where
did.
It'd be an episode, a self-contained story.
Well, nowadays you've got, scary fiction podcasts. It's the same thing, but these were, usually
radio
full cast
shows.
productions.
You tune in and, yeah.
And then I've got a second one, the Old-Time Radio Listener's Guide to Box 13, which is not horror. It's more of a detective action show, but it was fun too. Mm-hmm. But the new one that is coming out within the next month or so is the Old-Time Radio Listener's Guide to X-1.
Very science fiction-y.
There's like 130 episodes, and it was all, not science fiction-y, definitely science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
It had stories by Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke and
Ray Bradbury,
all those old-timey guys. Yeah, there's a lot of them, and that book will also be out in the next month or so. Stop in over at BlueHouseBooks.com, which is our publisher that carries those. And those will be out shortly, within the next month or so. Of course, the Amicus book, you can just go to HorrorGuysShop.com and it'll be there. I don't know, actually, if you go to Horror Guys Shop and type in radio, you'll find it there too.
Yeah.
It's kind of all the same site, really.
It links together.
Yeah, it does. All right, well, there's enough spam for the week. Let's move on to the last...
It's not spam. We have to be our own sponsor.
Okay. There's our...
That's our sponsorship
important
ad.
sponsorship ad for this week.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, the two books, the X-1 and Amicus, are neither one available right now, but they will be very soon. It's coming in September.
Awesome
Late
sauce.
September. And that brings us to The Last Voyage of the Demeter from 2023, directed by Andrei Overdahl, written by Bragi Schut, Zek Olkowitz, and Bram Stoker. Actually, it kind of was from Bram Stoker.
Oh, it's definitely based on his story, yeah.
Stars Corey Hawkins, Aisling Franciosi, Liam Cunningham, and David Dastmalchian. Hour and 58 minutes. It's kind of a long one. You can watch the trailer over at YouTube if you want. Now, spoiler-free.
Well, spoilers, if you know the story of Dracula, you basically know how the story ends.
Yeah.
It goes poorly for the people
Actually,
on the
watch
ship.
the first 5 minutes of the movie, you get to see how it ends.
Yeah, actually,
They show the end right
They
at
saw
the
the
beginning.
ending first, yeah.
Well, but probably because everybody doesn't know the story and they know how it ends anyway.
It fills
It's
them
like
in.
Titanic. The ship's going to sink.
What? The ship sank?
Well, spoiler-free part, it was very entertaining, taking a minor part of the Dracula story that usually gets very little movie time and expands it into a full story on its own. The use of CGI was a little heavy-handed, but there are enough practical effects to balance things out. Even knowing how things were going to work out for Dracula in the end, you still root for the characters and hold out hope for them. And we liked it very much.
Yeah, we did.
Now, this CGI thing is something that I've heard about. We did not see this in the theater. We watched it on TV.
And it might make a difference. It might have played better on the big screen.
It often does.
Mm-hmm.
I remember
CGI.
I remember the original Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
You watch it on the big screen, it looked great. You watched it on the TV, and you could see outlines
it
around
down.
the ships.
Mm-hmm.
You could often see things like that on Star Wars. This is the same thing. Dracula, I've heard people say he looked so real in the theaters.
And he does look real when, I think they're using practical effects.
It's a mix, yeah.
Yeah, it's a
in the
mix,
close-ups where he speaks and stuff, it's a real guy. But I think the majority of it, when he's flying around and doing his Dracula things, he's CGI.
Yeah, because
It's very obvious on TV.
and he's so misshapen that it couldn't be a guy in a suit.
Yeah.
So it had to be CGI. It might be a motion capture thing, but it's definitely CGI when they're showing the long shots and stuff.
Or maybe it's because there's actually so little obvious CGI. I mean, the boat and the actors and most of the situation, it's all real sets for the most part.
I thought some of the water you could tell sometimes. The
Yeah, the
splashing
big
and
long
so forth.
shots was probably CGI. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't even know if they had a real ship for this or if it was just a set. But anyway, we did like it.
Yeah, it was.
All right,
entertaining.
without spoiling the whole thing for us, tell us how we get started with this.
Well, we start off, we're told in 1897, a Russian schooner was chartered to carry private cargo, consisting of 50 wooden crates from Romania to England. And when the ship arrived, it was derelict.
Okay, so we know the ship arrives empty from the very first.
And then we open on a group of policemen investigating a ship that's blown up in the storm. They're all smashed up on the shore at Whitby, England. They recover the captain's log, and it contains a warning, and credits roll.
So we got a flashback story.
Well, we cut back to 4 weeks earlier, when a caravan of gypsy wagons is carrying many boxes through town. Captain Elliot and his grandson Toby disembark from the Demeter and start looking for a new crew. Clemens tries to join up as the ship's doctor, but he's rejected. The gypsies arrive with their cargo, but they don't stay past sundown. They're mighty nervous about getting these unloaded quickly. Well, the ship's men load the many crates onto the Demeter. There's an accident. One of the guys really screws up, and so the captain takes on Clemens anyway. Fires the other guy. Well, he didn't really fire the other guy. The other guy
saw the Dracula
symbol
logo on
the
the boxes.
dragon logo.
No, I'm not going on this boat.
Yep, I'm out of here. Well, as the Demeter sets sail, the gypsies are miles away and look back with relief. Whew, got rid of that. Yeah. Toby shows Clemens around, and they meet Huck the dog. Joseph is the ship's cook. That evening, Mr. Wojak, the first mate, reports that they're making really good time for the first day.
The winds are heavy and blowing in just the right direction.
Captain Elliot says this will be his last voyage. He plans to retire and make Wojak his successor.
Oh, he has no idea.
Yeah, a nice peaceful final voyage. Yeah, right. Well, meanwhile, the boxes in the hold look mighty ominous. until one opens and all the ship rats run away. Yeah, that's not a good sign. All the food livestock goes crazy. Clement goes to check out the busted box and finds one of them has burst open with nothing but dirt inside. What the what? They're hauling boxes of dirt. Why? Oh, and there's a woman inside one of them that has popped out. Clemens wants to do a blood transfusion to save her life.
Yeah, we get all the creepy, ominous stuff and the rats
anemic.
running away, and we're led to believe that that's Dracula getting out of the box.
It's not.
But
it's a
not.
woman. Yeah. And it made me, wonder if they had really changed it up or something, and this was going to be Dracula, but no, that's not the case.
No,
she's
no. Spoilers.
Yeah, she's not anyway. Well, while they're all distracted with this, another of the boxes opens up, and something far nastier than the girl wakes up.
There he is.
Yeah, Mr. Algarin sees the strange creature first, but he survives. Huck the dog isn't so lucky. Joseph finds Huck's body along with all the food animals dead. Nobody wants to stop in at port because they'll lose their bonus. And because he's the newcomer and some of the crew are racist, suspicions are cast on Clemens. Olgarin says there's a powerful evil on board. No man did this. Are we stopping there?
Yeah, it's a good place
we
to
should
stop.
there.
Yeah.
Because stuff happens.
If you know the story, you know the story. There's not a huge number of great surprises, but it's very well done.
It is so well done. Yeah.
Yeah, about the only time I've seen the Demeter chapter of Dracula addressed was in part 2 of the BBC version a few years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the 2020 BBC.
Yeah, we do have a... Well, that's on our website if you want to search horrorguys.com for 2020 BBC Dracula. And the second episode of that was pretty much all the Demeter stuff. And that installment of the series I thought was the best of the 3 episodes, so it only makes sense for someone to do a feature film of that mini-story.
Mm-hmm.
The isolation and claustrophobia of a ship, along with the superstitious sailors, makes this very tense. The fact that we all knew how it was going to end doesn't help. And the creature's look is based on 1922's Nosferatu, and he looks and acts like a shaky, weak, bat-like animal who is powerful but is not getting enough blood. He doesn't look anything like Christopher Lee Bela Lugosi or even Gary Oldman.
No, he doesn't.
Through most of the film, though, he is a CGI creature. Other than the CGI creature, the performances are all good. Clemens, okay, he survives at the end. Sort of a spoiler there.
Spoil it. Yeah.
It does set up kind of a possibility for a sequel. But, of course, with it, that really shouldn't happen if you've read the book.
Mm-hmm.
But it just
could.
It just ends.
They could squeeze another story
They
in
could,
between.
yeah, they could.
Yeah.
It just ends with him swearing to defeat Dracula. But his character never shows up in the books, so we know he doesn't. But overall, we thought it was very good. We liked it.
Yes, we did.
All right, well, what is next?
The Latent Image, a brand new one. Brand new. We were privileged enough to see this really before it was... This is one
I think
that
it
made
just came out
festivals.
Thursday.
It made its festivals, right? They were doing some confusion on this with festivals, and then they couldn't do any more festivals because they wanted a legitimate, full-fledged release.
Right, yes, it was scheduled for some festival. They had to cancel it because it actually got published.
So it might have been out there, where people have seen it, but, we saw it before the official release.
Heading to streaming very, very soon, if not already.
Yeah.
Directed by Alexander McGregor Burrell, written by him and also Joshua Tonks. Stars Joshua Tonks, Jay Clift, and William Tippery, hour and 23 minutes. There is a trailer in the show notes. Spoiler-free, what happens?
This one has you wondering what's really happening, what's real and imaginary, and what the characters are actually up to. The 3 guys, there is just really 3 guys in it.
Mostly just 2.
Yeah, mostly 2. They really do an excellent job. The setting and the set is perfect, and the script is really clever with good pacing. And we liked it right through to the end.
Yeah, and of course, since this is brand new, nobody's seen it, so we're not going to really spoil it much.
No.
There is a full synopsis on the website if you want to know what happens, but we're not going to kill it for you. Well, anyway, Ben is a writer banging away at a typewriter. Do people really do that?
Well, yes, as a matter of fact. It says the guy who hears Brian typing on his new used typewriter. Yeah.
Okay.
It happens.
It happens. He cuts himself and bleeds all over the page. He's working alone out in a cabin in the woods, and he hears someone outside and goes to investigate. No one's there. Much later that night, he sees someone with a flashlight outside, and then we see that there's someone inside with him. The stranger then cuts Ben's throat. Then Ben wakes up at his desk. That was all just a dream.
Psych.
But there is a stranger sitting on his couch who's bleeding and asks for bandages.
Oh, yeah, okay. And that's real.
That's real, yeah. The man takes all his clothes off and is passed out when Ben comes back into the room. In the morning, Ben wakes up and the stranger is reading the draft of his book. He says his ride broke down and he got lost in the woods. Ben explains that he's been writing a mystery thriller. The man says he's visited this cabin before while hunting. Ben offers to drive him to town, but he declines. We then cut to Ben exploring the woods in his vintage film camera. He finds a single shoe out in the woods. He then films the stranger looking in the trunk of his car.
Yeah, and this is a movie camera.
One of those old filmy Super 8 kind of things.
Uh-huh.
When the man walks away, Ben sneaks over to see what's in the trunk, but he doesn't get that far. The man decides to stay and try to fix his car. All right, Ben then gets a message from Jamie, whom Ben has left back home, abandoned him. The man has left his jacket on the kitchen chair, and Ben smells it before putting it on. Jamie shows up, and he's Ben's boyfriend. They kiss and make up for the fight they had. Except Jamie's not really there. That was Ben's imagination.
These people really have vivid imaginations.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
The man then goes off into the woods with a shovel and starts digging. What did he have in the trunk?
What indeed.
We're going to leave it there.
Yeah.
What was in the trunk?
And where is Jamie?
Yeah.
Huh.
And Ben's doing all this imagining stuff. Is he crazy? Is any of this real?
Is the stranger real at all?
Is any of it real? Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah, it's cleverly done.
Well, the set and the setting are excellent, and the music and sound are great too. There are only 3 real characters, and they all do fine as well. We were wondering all along if the man was simply a figment of Ben's imagination, or him just visualizing his thriller story. We also wondered what happened to Jamie, as his absence was suspicious. Even as it all developed, we weren't quite sure what was real and what was imaginary, which was kind of fun all the way up to the end.
Yeah, it was.
With only 3 actors in a cabin, films don't get much more bare bones or low budget than this, but it all looks really good and is entertaining throughout. We thought it was very good.
Yeah, we did. Liked it.
Yeah. What's up next?
How do you pronounce this, you think? Fucking nuts? Fucking nuts? We aren't supposed to cuss
We'll
on a
insert
podcast.
beeps later.
I
Beep,
guess,
beep.
yeah.
It's a short film called Frickin' Nuts,
Well,
2023.
It is spelled F-C-K
apostrophe N.
N.
Yeah.
And it is fucking
I assume
nuts.
for search engines and stuff, they didn't want to put the whole word out there.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's a link in the show notes where you can go and see this. It's written and directed by Sam Fox. Stars Maddie Nichols, Christopher Rydell, William E. Harris, and Vincent Stalba. Almost 12 minutes long. Oh, and it is just a trailer for it because this is in the festivals for now.
Oh, okay.
So you can't go to YouTube and watch it, but you can watch the trailer and get an idea.
But when you get a chance to see it, you really should.
Yeah. So anyway, after some over-the-top titles, we open on Sandy, who calls Dan to talk. When your girlfriend calls and wants to talk, it's never good.
No.
Dan is outside with the flowers, so she runs outside and tells him that he never should have come here. He declares his love for her, but she doesn't seem happy to hear it. She says her family are nuts. Really?
Really nuts.
We get some strange glimpses of Sandy's family inside. All right, well, this is the very definition of nuts, which is what she says at one point. It's got an interesting, hypersaturated lighting scheme, and the acting is very good for this story. Yeah, it's kind of over-the-top hammy acting, but it's right for this story.
The lighting reminded me of the color, the Munsters movie.
Very, very bright.
Yeah,
yes.
very bright background colors. And,
it's dark, but it's bright,
it's
too.
It's dark and bright at the same time. Yeah.
You pretty much know how it's going to go. It's just a matter of the reveal. So it's got a lot more suspense than anything else. And, that reveal is something.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, this was really good. We liked it.
Yeah, we
So
did.
keep your eye out for that one. It's going to be, well, I don't know. It's at the festivals now. It'll be around eventually.
I bet it'll be an award winner.
It's nuts.
It's crazy.
And last week we announced that this would be September of sequels, where all the movies would have numbers behind them.
Well,
we lied,
not
apparently.
all of them.
We've only got one sequel this week.
And it doesn't even have a number behind it.
Amityville 1992.
Well,
It's
not
about
like part
time.
2 or part 3 or 4. What would this be then? Part 4 or 5?
It's either 4 or
Technically?
5. I don't
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah.
They're not really. They're
And
not, at this point, it's not a series.
It's barely a sequel. Yeah.
Directed by Tony Randell, written by John G. Jones, Christopher DeFaria, and Antonio Toro, stars Stephen Mocht, Sean Weatherly, Megan Ward, and Damon Martin. Hour and 35 minutes. Trailer in the show notes. Spoiler free. Bad things happen because of a clock from the Amityville house, because of reasons. It's got some interesting ideas here and there, but it's unexplained, and it's fairly random. There is a story and some characters you kind of care about, but it's not a great sequel. In fact, it's so thinly connected to the first movie that it's a stretch to call it a sequel.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think I enjoyed it more than you did. I was more forgiving of it than you were, but yeah, to call it an Amityville movie. And the Amityville franchise has an issue with that.
well, the first, I believe, 3 movies were based on books and were tied to the Amityville house, the real Amityville story. This is, I think, the first one that we've covered that really just goes off the rails and just puts random stuff and puts the word Amity in front of it.
And it was based on a spin-off story, but, very, very far spun off.
Yeah. Okay, so, wow, yeah.
Shall I tell people about it?
It's our loser of the week, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Okay,
well,
tell people about it.
Well, we open in the Phase 2 models of Burlwood Estates. Looks more like a neighborhood from Poltergeist than the one from the Amityville Horror. It's a McMansion's, suburbs kind of thing.
It's a big, sprawling suburb where all the houses kind of look the same and they're all brand new.
Well, Jacob comes home. He's the architect who is somehow involved with this project, and he's just come home from another project, and he brought home an antique clock that the whole family thinks is creepy. It came from one of those houses we tore down for the development. A creepy old woman outside sees the house change into the Amityville house for a moment.
Those scary windows.
Yes, there's just a flash of it, so you know it's Amityville. Well, Andrea isn't the kid's mother. She was just there to watch them and take care of the family while Jacob was out of town. Jacob invites her to spend the night. She's seeing Leonard, but Jacob is very persuasive, and they have the sweatiest sex ever.
What do you think? They just turned the hose on both of them?
Oh, boy, did they hose them down.
It would stop being fun if it was that hot.
Yeah. Well, downstairs, the clock does some strange things involving a drill and razor-like knives. It's like drilling into the mantle and expanding. Well, Peaches the dog doesn't like the clock and barks angrily. So the son, Rusty, puts her back outside into the rain. Rusty flips a light switch, and their modern living room becomes a torture chamber. Turns the light back on, it's normal. Turns it off, looks weird. He's got a weird thing going. Well, it's very awkward in the morning when Andrea is still there to see the kids off, and I think the kids know what happened.
Yes.
Jacob goes for a run, but is attacked by the vicious Peaches the dog, who isn't their dog. And there was some confusion on that.
Well, the dog was in the house the previous night. They were all playing with the dog, but it's not their dog.
And Rusty was acting like it was his dog, but it's not their dog.
Let's just invite the neighbor's dog over for dinner.
Well, Jacob is badly injured, but he also does some real damage to the dog. We cut to Andrea in the hospital afterward. The dog treats Andrea like Jacob's wife, and she doesn't appreciate that. Well, Rusty skips school to play chess with Iris. That's the old neighbor who was watching the building change last night. He tells her what he saw. It's very old, and it's traveled a long way, she says, of the clock. Andrea and Rusty go to see the dog's owner, but the dog is just fine. That apparently wasn't Peaches who attacked Jacob.
Yes, it was. No, it wasn't.
It was, but it wasn't, yeah. Well, Rusty tries to tell Andrea about their weird room switcheroo, but she doesn't listen. Rusty experiences another time shift, about 3 hours. Lisa, the sister, offers to give Andrea her room, while Lisa sleeps in the living room. And at 3 a.m., something invisible crawls into the bed with Andrea. Andrea imagines seeing some kind of blood monster in her bed and then lets Lisa out of the living room where she got locked in. Well, Peaches the dog is killed that night, and the police come looking for Rusty, thinking he did it. Meanwhile, Jacob is obsessed with drawing the original Amityville house and clocks. Police want to know about Rusty's friends, but Rusty isn't cooperative. Andrea's real boyfriend, Leonard, comes over with food. And Leonard has Andrea and Jacob's relationship completely figured out, and Andrea agrees with him. As they talk, the neighbor's hedges catch on fire. Well, Rusty's inside playing the guitar, so he has no idea what's going on, but also no alibi. Leonard wants and insists that Andrea needs to get out of there. Well, Leonard goes downstairs and runs into Jacob, who isn't really Jacob. And he talks about hurting people before pulling out a pistol. And then he vanishes into thin air. Now, Leonard is...
Now, wait a minute here.
Leonard is not happy about
Andrea is sleeping with Jacob.
With Jacob, occasionally.
But Leonard is the boyfriend.
Yeah.
And the boyfriend is staying at the house with Jacob
Andrea.
and...
With Andrea in Lisa's room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the boyfriend is there in the other boyfriend's house.
Mm-hmm.
They're both sleeping with the same woman.
Yeah.
And, okay, yeah, that's uncomfortable.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and Lisa looks at herself. Oh, yeah. Meanwhile, while this is going on, Lisa looks at herself in the mirror, but the mirror version does things different than the real her. It's just kind of a mashup of weird stuff. Yeah. Well, morning comes and Lisa is dressed all slutty, like she's changed since last night.
The one in the mirror took over.
Yeah.
I'm guessing. I'm just guessing.
Yeah, I'm guessing. Yeah. Well, Rusty goes to see Iris, tells her about all the weird stuff. She believes him. He describes the torture chamber he saw in the living room, and she shows him a picture of a room in a book, and it was the house of a 15th century child murderer and cannibal.
You know, if I'm a 15th century child murderer and cannibal, I'm not going to invite someone to draw pictures of my torture chamber.
And where did this come from? How does this relate to the Amityville house, which is not... Okay,
oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, she opens her house on Amityville and sees the clock in a picture from there. So apparently the clock was in this cannibal guy's house, was in the Amityville house. Now it's in their house.
The clock doesn't look that old.
The clock soaked up some evil, I guess. Yeah. Well, through a weird series of coincidences, right out of Final Destination, this was a cool scene, actually. Iris is impaled by a diaper truck mascot.
What?
Yes, you have to see it to believe it. Rusty goes through her things, and he finds the pictures of the Amityville clock, and that's when the police arrest him, because reasons. What do they arrest him for?
Probably killing the dog, or setting the bushes on fire, or one of the many things he's being suspicious of.
Just because they think he's naughty.
Breaking into the neighbor's house and stealing her pictures.
It's a little vague, yeah. Well, Lisa lures her boyfriend into the basement and has him get undressed. He melts into the floor, screaming all the way down. What? Where'd that come from? Upstairs, Leonard takes a bath, and it's all black sludge. It only goes downhill from there. In the main bedroom, Jacob wakes up and he's looking possessed. Because he's possessed for some reason. Yeah, this is a really bad clock. Andrea sees something scary in Jacob's office before she finds Leonard's body hanging from a wire. Rusty comes from nowhere and tells Andrea about the Amityville clock. Rusty goes looking for Lisa, but all the windows and doors are sealed. Jacob attacks Andrea, throwing her through the wall, while Sister Lisa tries to seduce Brother Rusty upstairs.
Things are getting crazy.
Yeah, pretty crazy. Things are all very hectic until Andrea stabs Jacob in the dog bite in his leg until he passes out.
Ow.
Yeah. Well, Andrea notices that Rusty is now a baby. The clock did something to him by running backwards. He escapes out the front door. Andrea goes to smash the clock, but she finds gears inside the walls instead. The whole house has been taken over by the clock. She turns on the gas fireplace as the clock runs forward and ages her. And Andrea, who is now looking about 100 years old, strikes a lighter and the house explodes, throwing the clock into another dimension.
Okay.
And then Andrea wakes up, clean and uninjured. Jacob's at the door. He's just come home from his trip, and he's brought an antique clock. Well, Andrea smashes it to the ground in front of everybody, and they just stand there looking shocked. And then she grabs her bag and leaves. None of it happened. Or did it?
Yes.
Time loop. Time reset? Time reset because she blew up the clock.
Well, this was the last Amityville horror movie in the series based on a book. Okay, I guess there was a book for this one.
Yeah, there was. Yeah.
The actor who played Rusty looked like he was about 40, playing a high school kid.
I didn't buy that he was a teenager.
You get a lot more... You notice these things much more than I do, but this was really noticeable.
You noticed that one.
Yes.
Yeah.
We were not convinced of his teenagerdom. The music box tune that kept playing, at least in the first half of the film, got annoying really fast. All right, well, anyway, there's this haunted clock. Why is the clock haunted? Why is it doing any of this stuff? A lot of bad, weird stuff happens, but at no point do we ever know why. Because evil clock.
In Amityville. Amityville house. Evil. Scary.
D-U-M-B. Dumb.
Kinda.
Yeah. All right, one that is not dumb is Aliens from 1986, directed by James Cameron. You may have heard of him. Written by David Cameron, David Giler, and Walter Hill.
James Cameron. Written by James Cameron.
What'd I say?
David Cameron.
Oops.
Different guy.
Is there a David Cameron?
I'm sure there is somewhere.
Okay. Well, I don't know where that came from. Stars Sigourney Weaver, Michael Biehn, Carrie Henn, and Paul Reiser. 2 hours and 17 minutes. Probably depending on which version you're looking at. I remember there was an extended version. I think this is the extended version. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Spoiler-free, what happens?
This one has the horror elements on the back burner from the first movie, but it's much more of an action science fiction thriller. It's an awesome sequel, brings back Ripley and expands her character. The whole cast is very good, with a lot of recognizable faces that did a lot of stuff before and after this. And the special effects are excellent.
Yeah. Both of our top 5 movies include the original Alien.
And this is right up there, too. Yeah,
this is the same thing, just, it's much bigger budget.
Mm-hmm, more action, more fighting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Less crawling around. Well, there's not really less crawling around. There's plenty of crawling around in tunnels in this one.
Yeah, there is.
There's plenty of different monsters in this one. There's a lot of jump scares.
There's still an android.
You might not think of this one first off as a horror movie, but it clearly has the stuff.
Yeah, it does.
Well, after the credits, we see the escape ship from the Nostromo from the first film. Inside are Ripley and her cat, still in cryo-sleep. A giant ship shows up and opens the door. People come in, find the pod, and wake her up. Yay, first movie's over. Well, back on Earth, Ripley wakes up and has a visitor. Burke comes in with Jonesy the cat, who is also fine. He tells her that she's been asleep for 57 years. She then grabs her stomach and a chest burster pops out. Nope, just a fake-out nightmare. But the time passed is real. Those fake-out nightmares are getting old in horror movies. You know that?
This was fairly early in the process of those, though. We weren't tired of them at the time.
Ripley wants to know about whatever happened to her daughter after all these years. And we hear that Amanda Ripley died at age 66, 3 years ago, with no kids. Well, she goes through repeated interrogations about destroying the Nostromo. They're trying to blame it on her.
Well, and she did blow it up. I mean, she agrees she did that, but, for reasons. And they say, oh, that's nonsense. They don't believe the reasons.
The logs corroborate some of her story, but there's no evidence of a monster.
Yeah, it all blew up. And no evidence on the ship of one, so because she blew it out the airlock.
Yeah. Someone asks if there are any scary creatures on LV-426, and the expert says no. She clearly doesn't believe Ripley's story about the xenomorph. Ripley warns about the thousands of eggs on the planet. Mr. Van Leeuwen, the company man, says that terraformers have... Oh, it'd be much better if they had transformers.
Transformers, yeah. Uh-huh.
He says that terraformers have lived on LV-426 for 20 years, and they've never found anything unusual. They agree not to press charges, but she's busted back to a civilian and loses her pilot's license.
And I thought it was interesting, too. There's a couple comments here and a couple comments I noticed that the Marines make and stuff, that they have encountered alien life.
Yes.
out there.
Not another bug hunt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But nothing like
Nothing
these
like that,
xenomorphs. Yeah, they haven't encountered these before.
We cut to the colonists on LV-426. It's an extensive base with lots of people. There are prospectors spreading out all over, and one family finds the alien ship from the previous film. They go inside and leave the two kids outside in the car, and Dad comes home wearing a face hugger, so you know where it's going.
And that's Newt, is one of the kids, too. So
Yeah,
she's terrorized right from the beginning of this whole thing. Yeah.
Well, Burke and Lieutenant Gorman come to see Ripley. They've lost contact with the colony. They want Ripley to go with the Marines to check out what happened. Burke lays on the guilt and offers to get her license back if she goes.
Mm-hmm.
After another nightmare, she agrees to go back.
Yeah, apparently she's working just some grunt work, loading cargo, Nothing as
A futuristic forklift driver.
Yeah, nothing as fun or exciting as being a spaceship driver.
Yeah, well, we cut to the Marine ship, the Sulaco, loaded with heavy equipment and bristling with weapons. The cryopods open, and everybody, including Ripley, Burke, Gorman, and a whole squad of Marines, wake up. We get a few minutes with the Marines to figure out who they all are, and Sergeant Apone is their boss, working under Gorman. The Marines get Bishop to do a trick with a knife, and Ripley is terrified when she finds out he's an android with white blood.
Whoops.
Her last experience with an android didn't go so well.
That was unpleasant, yeah.
Burke apologizes that he didn't think of it being an issue for her because it's standard to have a synthetic on board. I prefer artificial person, responds Bishop. She doesn't like androids and makes it clear.
Yeah, and Bishop, he's their cook and, general handyman and, kind of like a servant, almost as, that they've got him along for, But he's like, I'm shocked. Was it an earlier model? And, he said, well, our behavioral inhibitors.
Those were
now,
always a little buggy.
Yeah, they were buggy. Our behavioral models now don't allow that.
I'm trying to think of the future episodes, Alien 3 and so forth, that were there artificial synthetic people in those?
Yes, there were.
There were, okay. It's been a long time since I've seen the third or fourth one.
Yeah, there were.
Well, Ripley briefs the men about her story, but the Marines don't care about the details. Hudson is a wisecracker, but Gorman isn't putting up with this crap. They all get ready to land, and Ripley works in a big loader machine, sort of a robotic forklift. Hicks and Apone are impressed with her. Literally everyone loads into the dropship, and they leave the big ship in orbit as they land.
And this was the first issue that I had with this movie.
Everyone goes to the surface.
They don't leave anyone on board the orbiting spaceship. This is a military operation. How could they? Why would they? Yeah. They would leave somebody on the...
Somebody?
Yeah.
Well, they don't.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Gorman admits he's not very experienced, which doesn't impress the Marines much. They fly over the complex, but they don't see any people. The dropship lets off the Marines' wheeled vehicle and then heads back off to land at a distance. There's a lot of damage on the inside of the buildings. Clearly everything isn't fine. The Marines disperse, and the civilians watch on monitors. It's all very quiet, and they don't see any action. Gorman brings the vehicle inside as Hudson gets the mainframe online. A wary Ripley goes inside with the others. They walk into a lab area, and Ripley sees several facehuggers in tubes. 2 of them are still alive. Well, the medical log says the patients died while removing them. Something appears on the motion scanner. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Well, it turns out it's a little girl, the one we saw whose father was the first victim. Her name is Newt, and she doesn't have much faith in the Marines' ability to protect her. Well, they find all the colonists' implanted trackers all bunched up in one place, so they all drive there. Once again, the Marines deploy and search. This time, things are not so quiet. The whole building now looks very bioorganic rather than bare metal as it should. Ripley says the group is walking next to the nuclear-powered atmospheric converters, so they can't shoot regular explosive rounds. Everyone gives...
and it's funny, she's the one that notices this.
Yes.
I mean, here's Burke, who knows all about these, these big machines that are, what they're doing is they're basically nuclear-powered things that are converting the atmosphere into air, into breathable air. and he doesn't notice, and the military people, and she's like, what's under there? Aren't those the coolers? And Burke's like, oh my God, we can't, those are nuclear, we can't shoot there.
Well, everyone then gives up their ammunition except for a couple of the Marines. They start finding the colonists, but they're not all dead. Not exactly.
Not exactly. Yeah.
They watch a chest burster pop out of one of them, and the Marines burn it. This alerts the main group of aliens, who now attack the Marines. Things go south very quickly.
Yeah, that's quite a battle scene.
Vasquez and Drake start firing live rounds as Hudson panics. Sergeant Apone gets killed, and Gorman doesn't know what to do next. Ripley takes over and drives the vehicle inside to save whoever's left. After a super hectic battle scene, the vehicle parks outside, and a bunch of people have died.
Mm-hmm.
Ripley wants to nuke the entire site from orbit, and Hudson's all in on that.
Yeah, he's in charge now. No, Hicks is in charge.
Hicks is in charge. Hudson's just
but
a
Hudson's
whiner.
like, yeah,
let's do
let's
that.
get out of here.
Burke, on the other hand, says that the facility is worth a fortune. Hicks is now in charge, so he calls the ship for an evac. The dropship, however, has been off eating lunch or something with the back door open, and an alien kills the pilot.
The second issue that I had, militarily. Okay, it's a military operation.
They're going there
unknown.
Expecting an alien invasion of some sort.
Yeah, expecting the worst. Military, should stand by, be alert, and they're just hanging out in the ship with the
door open.
The back door wide open. Yeah, the ramp. Yeah, just hanging out. The two of them. There's two of them on the dropship.
Well, the dropship crashes explosively.
Yeah.
Well, everyone takes some time to regroup and plan. Bishop speculates that there may be a queen laying eggs. He also tattles that Burke ordered him to pack up the facehugger specimens to return to Earth. Ripley says she won't allow it. Burke sent the colonists out to explore that ship, and this is all his fault. Well, Bishop calls and says the machine gun fire ruptured the reactor cooling system, just like they thought it might.
Yeah, and the control system, they might have gotten earlier warning too, but the control system was messed up by the crash, so they didn't get a chance to intercede early.
One damn thing after another.
It's too late now. It's gonna blow. There's like an emergency venting that they can see blasting out steam. Yeah.
Well, they only have about 4 hours until the whole base blows sky high. Bishop volunteers to go outside to the big dish and remote pilot the second dropship down to pick them up. Hicks shows Ripley how to use a marine gun, including the grenade launcher. Ripley and Newt stop to take a nap. Ripley wakes up and notices that 2 of the facehugger sample tubes are on the floor, empty, and her gun is missing. They narrowly escape the little monsters, but the door is locked so they can't get away. We see that Burke has turned off the video cameras and has gone full weasel mode.
Yeah, he's a weasel boy in this.
Ripley's resourceful, so she sets off the fire alarm. The Marines arrive just in time to save them. Meanwhile, Bishop gets the process started on bringing down the other dropship. Ripley tells them all about Burke, who wanted to impregnate someone and smuggled the embryos back to Earth in cryosleep while sabotaging the Marines' pods. He could jettison the bodies and tell any story he wanted to get past quarantine. Well, the aliens approach once again, and this time they're up in the ceiling. In the ensuing battle, Burke gets away, but not for long. Hudson gets killed, as does Gorman and Vasquez. Newt leads Ripley and Hicks through the air ducts as Bishop reports that the ship is on the way. Newt gets lost, but she's wearing a tracker, so Hicks tells Ripley that they can still find her. She carries the wounded Hicks out to the dropship, but then makes Bishop fly her back inside to rescue Newt.
Yeah, and Newt is not just lost. The alien nabbed her.
Yeah. Bishop warns that the reactor is going to blow in 19 minutes. Ripley gears up and goes down after Newt's tracker. After much hunting and digging through goo, she finds and releases Newt.
Just in time, too. An egg was next to her that had just opened.
Things are blowing up all over due to the reactor going critical, so Ripley accidentally ends up walking into a big room full of eggs.
Whoops.
She looks up and sees the thing laying all the eggs. The huge queen.
She's a big one.
Ripley and the queen look each other in the eye, and Ripley threatens to melt all the eggs. The little aliens back off to let Ripley pass. When one of the eggs starts to open, she blasts the eggs anyway. The enraged queen pulls herself loose from the big egg sack and comes after the humans. Well, the final countdown to the nuclear blast begins as Ripley and Newt run through the tunnels and up the elevators to the dropship rendezvous point.
And the Queen is coming up the other elevator.
There's 2 elevators, yes. Yeah. Bishop shows up with the dropship, and they make a very narrow escape back to the Sulaco in orbit.
Kaboom! Blows up. Yay! Killed all the aliens.
Nuke the site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure.
Well, it did it itself.
Yeah. They get out of the dropship, and Ripley approves of Bishop's work. They're friends now. At least until he's torn in half by the xenomorph Queen, who somehow came along with them in the ship. Ripley briefly gets away.
She must have jumped into the landing gear.
Or rode on the outside. Maybe it didn't matter.
Well, yeah, jumped on the outside.
Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah.
Ripley briefly gets away, but soon returns in the big power lifter she was driving before. In her new motorized exoskeleton, she's a physical match to the giant Queen, so they fight. Hand to tail.
Mm-hmm.
Ripley opens the door to the airlock and drops the Queen inside. But the Queen pulls Ripley and the lifter down with her. And with a few other options, Ripley opens the outer door to the airlock. Everyone manages to hold on except for the Queen, who goes on a permanent spacewalk.
Good riddance.
Ripley crawls over to Bishop's top half. He saved Newt from going out the airlock, and he's in pretty bad shape, but still talking. Ripley hicks Newt and Bishop get back into cryosleep and return to Earth. Happy ending for everyone.
Yeah, when they get back to Earth, Ripley and Hicks couple up and they adopt Newt, and Newt just adores Jonesy the cat, and they even fix Bishop, and it's a happy ending for all of them.
Bishop becomes their butler, and it becomes a new sitcom.
Oh, I totally watched that.
Okay, so Alien 3 doesn't quite go like that.
No, it doesn't.
And we'll talk about that another time, probably.
Yeah, probably.
In the future, I noticed their uniforms.
Yeah.
The United States still has a flag with 50 stars on it, and they still make fun of Mexicans, calling them illegal aliens, even jokingly.
Yeah, Vasquez.
This is how many hundreds of years in the future?
Vasquez is Hispanic, and they're well, of course, they're constantly ribbing each other and giving each other a hard time. Yeah, that's one of what was somebody said alien, and she thought they meant illegal alien and started shooting or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, something along those lines.
I mean, that's a joke right now, and it would probably be funny right now,
then.
but 500 years in the future or whatever,
well, still, really? That's still a joke 500 years from now?
It could be argued that this is more science fiction or action blockbuster than horror, but it's got a great bunch of monsters, lots of gore, and a few excellent jump scares. That said, as far as military sci-fi goes, this is unequaled on film. This is 2 hours and 17 minutes of non-stop action. The acting is perfect. Sigourney Weaver, it's not that hard to say.
No, it isn't.
Sigourney Weaver reprises her role and expands on it really well. Bill Paxton has his most iconic role here, as does Lance Henriksen. Lance Henriksen said if this one hadn't worked out, he was going to quit acting.
It did work out.
He'd been in a few things, but none of them were all that successful, and he went on to lots of things after this.
Yeah, good career.
Paul Reiser had only done comedy before this, but he's very perfect as a smarmy corporate shill. I think he's a smarmy corporate shill in Stranger Things now, isn't he?
I think so.
Yeah, it's been a few years for that one, too.
Uh-huh.
As with the original, all the characters have names and personalities, so they just aren't nameless victims. Awesome movie.
Yeah, it was.
And that's all we're going to go into in detail this week. If you want to go over to horrorbulletin.com, you can also read our reviews of 1990's Misery with James Caan and Kathy Bates.
That was an excellent one.
Yeah, I've seen this. You wouldn't think 2 people in a cabin would be so interesting.
So
I've seen this several times, and it really doesn't get boring.
It's a really good adaptation.
Yeah. And also The Picture of Dorian Gray, starring George Sanders, Heard Hatfield, Donna Reed, and Angela Lansbury.
Early work by her.
I think this was her second film.
Third, I think.
Third, okay.
Yeah, uh-huh.
She was young
but
once.
She was
the Murder, She Wrote lady was young once.
She was a young thing here. Yeah, still in her 20s. I think she was 20s by this time, early 20s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was good too. It was good too.
Yeah.
We'll go with that.
It was.
All right. So stop in over at horrorguys.com if you want to read the full spoilery reviews of the Demeter and the Latent Image. They're on there. Or get everything we do in your email once a week by going to horrorbulletin.com and signing up for that. It is a free, once a week, single email We're not going to bury you in emails every day or anything. It's once a week and only once a week.
Uh-huh.
And of course, you can still pick up the book containing all the reviews of the month. Go to horrorguyshop.com and follow the links from there. And until next week, I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
And we'll see you next week.
See ya.